This is Fans on the Run, a podcast made by, for, and about Beatles fans. And now, here's your host, Ethan Alexanian.
All right, hello. Welcome back to Fans on the Run. That is the name of the show. My name's Ethan Alexanian. That was my name. I'm not good at introductions. You know that. You've listened to the show. It's just how it is. Oh, man. I've mentioned this before on the show. When I first started, I wrote a little list of names of people who, in an ideal world, I would like to have on the show. As a musician and a general Beatles nerd, our guest today's name was quite high on that list. He was a founding member of the Chesterfield Kings. He's a member of the Empty Hearts, whose new album, the second album, is out now. He's the author of Beatles Gear, all the Fab Four's instruments from stage to studio, and I'm very nervous right now. Please give a very warm welcome to Andy Babiuk. Welcome to Fans on the Run, Andy.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and don't be nervous.
Okay. Well, I feel like I'm just a nervous person.
Well, don't be nervous. There's more things in the world to be nervous about.
That, again.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah. What? Yeah. I don't even know what to say anymore about what's going on in the world right now.
Well, great. Let's not talk about it's depressing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about cooler stuff because that's more fun.
Yeah. It's all I can say is just what the fuck.
Well, yeah, I concur.
Yeah. So, how have you been doing with this lockdown?
As good as you can be, you know. I mean, it's affected everyone in the world. So, you know, I mean, it's just a bizarre, you know, thing that we're all dealing with. You know, right now, with a brand new album that just came out August 28th, I'm actually supposed to be on the road in the U.S., Europe, Japan, and I'm not. So yeah, that's depressing. So, you know, what do? You live through it as we all have to. We got to figure it out, and hopefully they figure it out sooner than later.
Well, it's at least that's the one shining light. Still one of the pleasures of modern life. There's a new Empty Hearts album.
Well, yes. Thank you for saying that. It's very kind of you. Listen, we had a lot of fun making it, and we had all the great intent to go out and play for our fans and tour and, just have a lot of fun on the road. That was the whole premise of the band. But, that got pulled out from under us. But the record label, Wicked Cool, distributed by The Orchard and Sony, they doing a killer job with it, promoting it and stuff. They just put out a new single today on limited edition orange swirl and black vinyl for Halloween. Jonathan Parker's journal backed with The Haunting of the Tin Soldier, and they even put out a video for it. So, in timing for October and the whole Halloween spirit. So they've been really behind it and helping promote it, even though the whole COVID thing and the world pandemic, but, instead of hiding under a rock like a lot of people have, they actually went full on. So we've been very successful because of that, because of all their hard work. But, it's just weird. It's a weird setup.
So if my memory serves me correct, you guys had a single out because I remember reading about this. It's like, oh, wow. Ringo Starr.
Yes,
that one guy from that one band.
That famous guy by the name of Ringo. It's funny. Yeah. You could just say Ringo and they know who it is. You don't even have to say his last name.
It's Sir Richard Starkey.
Yeah, not even that. It's his real name. But no, we were very fortunate to have Ringo play on the new album, and the label released it before the album came out. They actually released it as a single with an unreleased flip side. They were very anxious to get it out. It's great. We're very thankful to Ringo for doing it, actually.
How does it feel knowing that you've played on like the same single as a Beatle?
I know we did it. And as you know, I'm a big Beatles fan. And it's a little surreal because it's like there's a side of me that, oh, yeah, it's great. But then there's a side of me that I always look back and I go, fuck, man, like, I got a Beatle to play on my record. Who the fuck gets that to do that? You know, part of my French, but
oh yeah, oh no, that language is quite welcome here.
No, but I mean, yeah, it was astonishing still to this day. I mean, I think Clem Burke, our drummer from Blondie, he's a drummer in the Empty Hearts. I think he says the best thing. His quote when he was asked about it was, by having Ringo play on our album, it kind of gives the Empty Hearts the Beatles stamp of approval, which is very hard to get.
Well, you personally have had the Beatles stamp of approval, because that wasn't the first time you've done something with Ringo. No,
listen, all four of us know Ringo independently, not just from the Empty Hearts. Yeah, Wally toured with him. Wally Palmer from the Romantics was in Ringo's All-Star Band for 2.5 years or something like that. Toured here in the States a couple times, in Europe and South America. So Wally knows him quite well. Elliot knows him, and of course Clem knows him too. So it was, it just kind of worked, you know. It was kind of a weird way it actually happened. You know, it wasn't something we were planning on at all, actually. You know. Not in the slightest way.
Yeah. Like, I can't even imagine, like, starting the band back in, what was it, like 2013, 2014, and thinking, well, you know, step one, put out an album. Step two, have Ringo play on a single.
No, we never thought of having anybody play on it. It wasn't that. It really wasn't.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, like, we did the first album, and the whole, well, going back to Ringo, the concept of the band came to me when Wally literally called me. I have a guitar shop here in Rochester, New York.
Fab Gear.
Yeah, Andy Babiuk's Fab Gear, appropriately named, you know. Beatles Gear, Rolling Stones Gear, you might as well have Fab Gear. Anyhow, I was literally going home from my shop, and Wally had called me because he was leaving the next day to fly to South America with Ringo to do a tour, you know, and I'm like, okay, big shot. Okay, you have fun on that fucking plane, private jet and all that, you know, but we're real dear friends. I mean, we're the closest buddies, and we have been for years. The Romantics and the Chesterfield Kings played a lot of shows together and stuff, and I've known Wally forever. He's also Ukrainian, so am I. So we have this mutual friendship that's gone back, you know, 30 years or so. Anyhow, we were talking, and I literally, like, the Chesterfield Kings weren't playing anymore, and I literally just threw it out there to him. Like, it was like one of those ideas that just comes to your head and you just say it, because I said, hey man, when you come back, what if we get a band together and just pretend like that you had that feeling when you were a kid and you saw the Stones or you saw the Beatles on TV, and you're like, oh man, I want to do that. And you went out and figured out how to get a guitar and figure out how to play it, and you got together with other guys, and you were just like obsessed with, like, oh, we got to do this, you know, and that magical feeling you get. And he goes, well, who else are you thinking? And I go, well, we both know Clem, and he's one of the best drummers in the world. You know, Clem actually played in the Romantics for a while, and, you know, I did a lot of shows with Blondie and various other things that Clem did. So I knew Clem very well. And then Elliot, you know, obviously Clem knows Elliot, and Wally played with the Cars, Romantics, playing with them and stuff. So we kind of all knew each other. And Wally's going, yeah, but we all live in different cities. I go, we'll figure something out. Why don't you go on your tour, big shot, and give me a call when you get back. So I literally get a phone call back a month later. Hey, how did the tour go? Great. He goes, yeah, but, you know, I got to talk to you. I've been thinking about that idea. I really think we should do it. I go, yeah. So I called Clem up, and he was totally game. And I called Elliot, and said, yeah, well, so Wally and I hopped on a plane. We flew out to LA, and we literally rented like a little rehearsal studio, and we just showed up with some guitars and a couple amps, and just got in a room and started playing Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley songs and stuff. And hey, I got this idea for a song. And literally we did that about 3 or 4 times, tops. And then Clem, I have a big studio here in Rochester. It's a private studio, but, you know, the guys knew about it. Clem called me up. I remember it was like March. And he goes, hey, I booked the flight to Rochester. We got to record all those songs. We had like, I don't know, 10, 12, 14 songs, something like that.
All within those 3 or 4 rehearsal days.
Yeah, because we're friends. And yeah, everybody's pretty talented. And everybody's, they're real guys that know how to play. And it was very easy to work together because we all like the same stuff. And Clem goes, yeah, I booked my flight. Like, he didn't ask anybody. He just booked a flight and assumed that everybody could do it at this specific time that he picked. I called the other guy to go, hey, Clem booked a flight. They're going, wow, yeah, I guess we could just, yeah. So we literally, like, showed up here. We got a hold of Ed Stasium, who's did the Ramones. He did everything from the Smithereens to, Talking Heads, Living Color, ton of other bands that he's got multi-platinum albums with. That he's a friend of ours, and we asked him to help produce it. So he came in, and we had a bunch of equipment sent here, and he literally cut the record in like 5 days. And we didn't even know what we were going to do. I don't even think we had a name of the band at the time.
It's irrelevant.
No, we just did it because we were trying to have fun, and we were having a lot of fun. Hence, we cut a record in 5 days. And then we weren't really thinking beyond that. We just thought, okay, well, maybe we'll go out and play some shows or something, see if anybody likes this. And we quickly had like some guy want to manage us right away, and they got us a record deal immediately. And like next thing you know, we're doing a tour here in the States and flying to Japan right after. It just happened like really quick.
Yeah.
And we didn't think nothing of it. We didn't plan out the record. We didn't think about anything. And that's kind of how we work. And the premise of the band was always don't take it too seriously. This is supposed to solely be fun. As soon as it's not fun, we stop. That was the rule. And also the other rule was like, each guy's got commitments to, like Clem plays in Blondie. So Blondie's got a tour. He's got to do that. He can't not do it. That's his main thing. The Romantics got a summer tour. They got to do it. Well, he's got to do that. So that would always come first. So anyhow, so we had time where we didn't do anything because the other guys were busy with other shit. But then we thought it was time to do another album. And this time, instead of just like rushing and just writing a bunch of songs and recording them, we actually thought it out. So the new album's more, we took our time writing songs. We wanted it to be more like how you used to buy a record back in the day, and it was an event, and you brought it home and you played it, and you like kind of like, you got high or you got drunk or something, and you kind of put it on and you listened to it from beginning to end because it was a piece of work. It wasn't just like I heard a song,
High or drunk, we on Fans on the Run don't condone drug use, only unless you want to.
Yeah, well, exactly. So
yeah, it's fun.
And in doing the album, we had no preconceived notion of like what to do on it, as far as we're gonna have this guy play on it. No, we again wrote the songs at a couple different sessions, got together, because we all live in different cities, so you'd have to fly to LA, or those guys like coming to Rochester because I have a studio here. So we'll get together a bunch of times. Then we actually brought Ed in, we recorded it. And the Ringo thing fits in here because we cut all the songs for the record. and then we were done with that, the basic tracks, and then we came back to do vocals, and Clem, I think, was busy with Blondie. He's out on the road. And so we started cutting the vocals, and after day's session in the studio, we're at a restaurant drinking martinis and shit, and Wally kept on lamenting over this one song, and it was actually a leftover song from the first album that I thought was a really good song. And he kept on saying that he thought Clem played maybe a little too fast, that it had to be more in the pocket, laid back. And I go, I think it's fine. And our producer, Ed, was going, you're crazy, Wally. Yeah, it's good. And like the next night, same thing. We're drinking martinis. I really think we should have recut it again just one more time. I think it's fine. Then he brought up, he goes, when I played with Ringo, I used to stand in front of the drum riser all the time, and he would just play in the pocket, man. It was so great. That's what this song needed. I go, all right, big shot, call up Ringo and ask him to play on it. You big mouth, go right ahead. And we joke about it, right? He goes, yeah, right. Nobody gets a Beatle to play on their record. I go, yeah, all right. So this became like a joke. And every time he brought up or we had to do the vocals on that particular track, he'd be like, well, you know, it's still too I go, call up Ringo then, or shut up. You know, it became like this standing joke with us for a while. And to the point where we were making it ridiculous, like, you know, a couple months went on, and like, you know, Wally lives in Detroit, so he would go back to Detroit, like 4 o'clock in the morning, I'd send him a picture of Ringo from Help or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just picture, you know, just to fuck with him and stuff. And then, sure enough, a couple months later, Wally was talking to Ringo on the phone, and Ringo was asking him, you know, how's the record going and everything. He goes, you know, it's going really well. Funny you should ask, though. There's this one song that I had together, and you know, we caught it, and Clem played a little fast on it for my taste. It needs like how you play, more in the pocket. You know, maybe it'd be great if you could play on it. He goes, what do you need me? You know, this is Ringo. He goes, what do you need me for? You got Clem Burke. He's one of the best drummers in the world. You got a great drummer. Well, he said, yeah, but he doesn't play like you know, so Ringo agreed to do it. And, you know, we sent him the stuff, and he cut it, and it was fucking great, man.
I want to ask, because this is kind of on a very unrelated note, but kind of related, but not really. I'm a big guitar nerd. I was, you know, looking at the page for your store, and just as I thought, you know, I had convinced myself, no, Ethan, you shouldn't buy a Rickenbacker. They're very expensive. And then I see the limited edition one that you guys did with the aged fire glow, and I'm like, you've got to be fucking kidding me.
Well, we're a big Rickenbacker dealer. I'm a big Rickenbacker fan for obvious reasons. I collect old ones myself. And, you know, we're a dealer for Rickenbacker. We're actually one of their largest dealers in the whole country. And I've known the Hall family who own Rickenbacker. I knew F.C. Hall, Francis Hall, who bought the company from Adolf Rickenbacker back in the 50s. I knew him. And then, of course, his son, John Hall, who ran the company for quite a few years. He just retired a couple of years ago. Really? And now his son, Ben, runs the company. It's literally a family-run business. It's quite small, but I know the family quite well. And it was my son who, like, I was at the Hall's home, and they're in Laguna Beach. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful home. And over a cliff and stuff, really gorgeous. And we were talking about all kinds of stuff. And I had seen some stuff at the factory, because he had us over to the factory, and I saw some guitars they were making that were very unique. And when we were at his house, I said, John, you know, what were those guitars with those, you know, mirror finish and on the pickguard? And he goes, oh, that's for the Japanese distributor. I go, how many of those you got to make when you do that? He goes, minimum of 25. So it's worth our while, because we don't really do custom work. I go, oh. So when I came back and we're at my shop, and I was telling my son about it, who works for me. And, you know, I don't know, about a month later, he says, hey, you should call John Hall up and ask him if he'll do a limited run for us, you know. And they'll never do it. They just don't, you know. We're just a dealer. They did it for a distributor. Because I tried for the hell. And I called John, and he was willing to do it. We're the first shop anywhere in the whole world, actually, that they did an exclusive run for. And it was just a stock 330 and snow glow. So it was pure white pickguard. They did 25, and they sold out like in a day. And
25 Rickenbackers sold out in a day.
Yeah. And so it was kind of then, you know, I saw the guys at the NAMM show, the guys from Rickenbacker, and I said, hey, I'd like to do another order. They're going, oh, no, hang on. We're going to have to pause that for a bit. What we did for you caused us a real shit show. every dealer is going, hey, how come you did it for him? You got to do it for us. And now we got to do a couple limited runs for some other people and blah, 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 blah. So subsequently, I think this is the 5th instrument that we've done with them. We did the 330 Snow Glow. Then we did a 4003 bass with vintage pickups, vintage nameplate, everything. It's also in Snow Glow and white with checkerboard binding. And then we did a black, like the 360 that we show now with the vintage, but we did it in black, and we did 30 of those. Those sold out right away. And then we did a candy apple green metallic bass. Those sold out right away. We did 30 of those. Beginning of this year, we did it was candy apple purple. So it was based on an old muscle car, Mopar Chrysler Dodge, called Plum Crazy Purple is the color. And we did that that literally sold out in like 20 hours. I mean, all 30 of them sold out right away. And so this time I didn't want to like just sell them out right away. I wanted to have them kind of like trickle out, because then people get pissed. They can't get them. Like it gets offered and it's gone in 1 second. So we kind of didn't really advertise it. We kind of just put it out there. And so I think we only have 6 left or something like that out of the 30. So,
they're
so
absolutely gorgeous.
You can actually purchase yourself one. You know, we do ship to Canada.
Yeah. Again, if I had like an extra, it's like $4,000, 3 or 4.
$32.99, I believe.
It's like $4,000 Canadian.
Yeah, you could go rob a bank. You know, it's easy.
I could. You know, it's worth it for a Rickenbacker.
Yeah, right.
Oh, because that vintage Fire Glow is just beautiful.
Yeah, to be honest with you, a lot of those things are designed after just the simple fact that I want one myself. So, you know, call it selfish, but it's the guitar geek in me.
Well, you're appealing to all the other guitar geeks out there, because, you know, I do salivate over these guitars, and, you know, I'm sending pictures to my buddy, like, look at this.
Yes, it's a special sickness we all have.
Oh, yeah. But what a sickness to have.
That's very good.
Yeah. Well, now I want to jump right back to the beginning.
Sure.
Go back to its kind of central Beatles theme. Sure. How did you first discover the Beatles?
I had 2 older sisters. My oldest sister, Nadia, she had Beatle albums and stuff. And so she gave me she actually kind of really introduced me to music. She was a few years older than me. She just passed away recently. But she gave me my very first Beatles record, which was Beatles 65. And years ago when I was hanging out with Ringo, I told him the story on how I acquired it off of her, and he laughed. And he goes, "Oh, give me that record. Let me sign that for you." You know, and that was at the point where he wasn't signing anything, but I actually had the original record with me.
So this was post, no autographs, peace and love.
No pictures either, you know. But no, he's a sweet guy. But that's who turned me on to music. And I could tell you right now, I played Beatles 65 on a shitty little close and play kind of record player until it turned gray. I don't know if you remember when records, like if you would play a record, overplay it would go from being black to like a weird shade of black gray. And that record is gray. It's not black anymore. That's how much I played it. It's almost unlistenable now, but it was like my very first record. So and I also, my sister played guitar, and she taught me, you know, first chords and stuff, and I kind of stole her guitar until I got my own. And I distinctly remember telling my parents when I was like a little kid, I was telling them, you know, when I grow up, you know, I think there was a conversation on how people grow up and they become a doctor or a lawyer or something. And I was telling them, and very convinced of it too, when I grow up, I want to be a Beatle. That's what I want to do. And they were trying to explain to me as a child that, oh, you can't grow up and be a Beatle. You got to get like a real job. And I said, no, well, that's what I want to be. I'm going to be a Beatle. And so here I am.
You're as close to being a Beatle as there is to, actually being a Beatle.
Well, no, obviously I'm saying it as a joke. It was just a little kid not knowing any better, so that was my introduction to the Beatles. And
I think we all still want to be Beatles when we grow up.
Yeah, that's if I do grow up ever. Yeah.
That's a big if for all of us.
Mentally, that is.
Now, here's the important question about that Beatles 65 record. Was it mono or stereo?
Mono.
So are you a mono guy or a stereo guy?
I think when it comes to the Beatles records, you really do need to listen to them in mono. I really believe that. Although a lot of this stuff, we grew up listening to it in stereo, hearing the weird, I Feel Fine with all the reverb and, shit to one side. It was like, there were records that like you'd hear a certain way. And then when you hear the mono, I mean, I don't know about you, but like, when you're a kid, you don't have a lot of money. So it wasn't like you could go out and own every record. You know how they would, on the Capitol records, they would show the other albums on the back. Yeah. And I would be like, the Beatles story. Wow. And then I'd see it in the store and it's like a double album. And it was more expensive, so I never sprung for it. And it's probably a good thing I didn't, because I'd be bummed out, because I didn't realize that a lot of it was just nonsense.
Yeah, waste of fucking money.
Yeah, but it was a cool looking cover when you're a kid looking at this little thing. And there was no internet, there was no TV. There's 3 channels on TV. That's it. I mean, you couldn't really you couldn't research stuff. So you didn't know. You just saw this little picture and you listened to the music as you were staring at a picture for hours. Going, I gotta have that one. Oh, something new by the Beatles. And I think in Canada you had a whole different set of albums, different.
Well, we had
the same thing.
We had a couple different albums, but for the most part, they're the same American albums.
Yeah, but you got the cooler Let It Be.
We did get
the booklet in it.
Oh yeah, the nice box.
Yes.
I'm still looking for a copy, but they aren't getting any cheaper.
No, yeah.
And I'm just an 18-year-old with disposable income.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that was my introduction to the Beatles, and obviously it just grew through the years and got more ridiculous.
This is going to be an interesting question, because we've already talked at length about one of them, but who's your favorite Beatle?
Well, that's really a hard question. I like all 4 of them. It's a 4-headed monster, as they would call themselves.
Yeah.
It's I always say it's the sum of the whole that made the Beatles. It wasn't, as you could see when they did music independently after the Beatles, wasn't quite the same as the magic when they all played together. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to say one Beatle was, this guy's way cooler than that one. They all had their thing, and the Beatles were the Beatles because the 4 of them got together. When they went apart, obviously they all did great, cool music, but it wasn't the Beatles. It was different. So it's hard to say. I don't really have a favorite. They're all 4 of those guys are something else.
Well, I'll ask kind of flip side. Who's your favorite Stone?
It's kind of the same thing, and obviously with the Stones, it's different phases of the Stones. You obviously have Mick and Keith, who are like the main 2, but Brian Jones. Well, yeah, man, he's he was so creative, and in my earlier days playing in the Chesterfield Kings, I would emulate Brian Jones quite a bit, even down to like a haircut. When we started the band, the guys in the band were going, "Man, you should grow your hair like this. You look just like Brian Jones." So, yeah, fucking. Who better to look like? You look like Brian Jones.
Well, that does make sense. I was watching a clip earlier today of you guys on, I think it was like MTV in the early 80s, doing a cover of 99th Floor.
Sure.
And I'm like, he looks like someone.
Yeah, I used to wear the tie and the thing. Brian would always the other guys would wear like a sweater or something. He'd wear like a tie and a suit jacket and stuff. With the Beatle boots and everything. Or they'd call them Cuban boots,
Yeah.
Chelsea boots.
But that track is still killer.
Oh, thank you. Billy Gibbons song.
Yeah. What was his group? The Moving Sidewalk?
That's correct.
Yeah. Other than, ZZ Top.
Yeah, Texas band, yes.
Yeah. Also, he was also in the Zombies, but they weren't the Zombies. That's one of my favorite stories in anything related to music. He was in a fake version of the Zombies.
Well, I believe, and Johnny Winter told me he used to get all the better gigs in Texas because his mom was LBJ's secretary.
Really?
Yes. So they used to get better gigs. And Billy's a great guy. He's really cool. So yeah, we were Chesterfield Kings, and we that whole garage scene, all the cool bands like Blues Magoos, Electric Prunes. We loved Paul Revere and the Raiders. That's why we used a Vox organ.
Yeah.
We ended up working with Mark Lindsay and made records and wrote songs with him and stuff. I mean, a lot of those things were very much influenced by it, and it spun off of my love of the Beatles. I love the Beatles, but then obviously you're gonna like the Stones. If you like the Beatles, you like 60s Stones, man. Those are fucking great songs. And of course the Kinks and bands like the Pretty Things and all that.
I love the Pretty Things.
Yeah, so we were very influenced by that when we started the band, but the Beatles were a huge influence on us. We're just trying to sing that well. Wasn't the singer that we had at the time? He was more fit to sing like Jagger than he was the Beatles. That's one of the things I'm very proud of in the Empty Hearts. We got a lot of singers in the band, so everybody could sing, and we were able to do some pretty cool backing vocals and a lot of intricate melody vocals, and it was just a lot of fun.
There's a reason why the show isn't video, because I just have the biggest dumb grin on my face right now just listening to these stories.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm pontificating too much.
Oh no, it's the big dumb grin means it's going very well.
Oh, okay. Well, then okay. I should have a beer then if I'm having fun talking nonsense with you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'll take some Xanax and we can both elevate to a higher state of consciousness.
But yeah, no, the Beatles are a big influence on me musically, and still to this day. It's a huge influence on me. I mean, even on this new, you mentioned the Empty Hearts album. I mean, the opening track, Coat Tailor, that we do on the record, it's got a lot of harmonies and stuff. When we were making the record, we didn't intend to have the song open with just vocals. And then we thought, oh, fuck, nobody have the balls to do something like the beginning of Paperback Writer on a song, just vocals. That's pretty ballsy to do. You got to have your vocal chops down pretty good. And then we said, oh, fuck it, let's do it. And we figured it out how to do it and did the vocals on that. And that's how the album actually starts, with just vocals, kind of paying homage and great respect to the Beatles, I mean, the direct inspiration, you can see it and hear it on the record. I mean, we're not hiding that we're big Beatle fans. The four of us are like huge Beatle fans. So
at the start of the show, I almost called the band the Lonely Hearts.
Yeah, no, we're the Empty Hearts. As a matter of fact, we didn't name ourselves. Little Steven named us.
Little Steven as in Underground Garage.
Yeah, and obviously he plays with Springsteen in the E Street Band, and he's an actor. He was Silvio Dante in The Sopranos. So he's a friend of ours, and he named us. We literally couldn't think of a name for the band. Literally, I mean, months had gone on, and every name that we thought of was taken. So we had. An attorney who was a friend of ours who said, listen, guys, if you pick a name, make sure you pick something unique, because the way it works is if someone somewhere used the name, and even if they played one little gig at a local bar and they have a flyer, or even if they posted it on the internet, they could sue you for the fact that you're using their name, and they're going to think you have a lot of money, and they're going to who knows if their dad's a lawyer. You don't want to go there.
Yeah.
Pick a unique name. And I'm telling you right now, every cool name that we ever thought of is used. Somebody already is using it somewhere, because we look it up. You look it up on the internet, so sure enough, some guy in some weird part of the United States or India or some crazy place is like, you got to be kidding me. So we started reaching out to friends of ours. Speaking of the Stones, we actually asked Andrew Loog Oldham, who's, used to manage the Stones, and he's a friend of ours. And we asked him, he'll think it's a cool name. So he sent us some. No, the cool ones were used. And I don't know. So, and then
you asked Andrew Loog Oldham for names and did not use them.
No, just none of them appealed. All four guys got to agree. Oh, that's cool. When it's a good name. So I was talking to little Steven, and he goes, look, I got a list of 25 names that I've been saving for years, just in case I want to start a band. It's the fucking coolest names you'll ever hear. I'm going to send you my secret list. I'm sure you're going to find a good name on there. Okay. They were the best names for bands. I mean, literally, they were so great. And we looked them all up. There was at least 10 names on there we would have used in a flash, but someone in the world was using it. I'm like, fuck. So I call him back up. Hey, man, you're not going to believe this, but all these names are the best things ever. Take any one of them. They're all being used. He goes, fuck you. They're not being used. And I'm telling you, he's like Silvio for real. When you talk to him, he's not acting. And so he actually had his assistant double check it to make sure. And he was real pissed. He goes, oh, fuck, I can't believe my fucking secret list. Ah, shit. So, then another month goes by. I think we were recording the record at this point, or maybe we were just about to. We still didn't have a name for the band. We had no clue what we were going to call it. That's about how serious we were taking it. We're just like, let's just do stuff. If we think of a name, that'd be cool. If not, big deal. We'll just have fun. And then I get a text message late at night one night from little Steven. You fucking guys think of a name for your band yet? Literally. And I just sent him no. And he goes, you're going to be called the Empty Hearts. I said so. That's all. So I copied the whole text message and I sent it to the other three guys. And I said, hey, guys, I just got this from little Steven. If any of you guys want to argue with Silvio Dante, be my guest. Other than that, I guess we're going to be called the Empty Hearts. That's literally how we got our name. Literally.
Oh, there you go.
So we were christened by little Steven. And I got to be honest with you, it was shocking that it was a name that wasn't being used. And it's such a fucking good name,
It is. If I had been born 20 years earlier, I would have taken that name.
Yes. So there you go. So we were super influenced by the Beatles, and obviously you could tell. I wrote a book about the Beatles equipment, and that was also a spin-off of being in a band. So the whole idea of playing and trying to emulate the Beatles' music was really the whole cusp of why I wrote the book in the first place.
Well, I want to talk about the book because I think it's one of the greatest Beatle books ever written. Not saying that because I'm a musician, but that's why I am saying that.
Well, thank you. Very kind of you.
I want to know, how did you decide to, write what is now basically considered the Bible of Beatle equipment?
Well, like I said, a lot of it had to come. It came from the concept of the Chesterfield Kings. We were a band very much inspired by music from the 60s and, some from the 50s as well, blues and Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and stuff. But a lot more Stones, Kinks, Beatles, that kind of a thing. And when making our own records, we were really trying to make our records sound like that. So in the late 70s and then going into the very early 80s, production in studios is really terrible. It sounded like shitty jazz records and, horrible, just terrible sounding things that were like modern at the time, but to us just sounded horrible. We wanted to sound like the Stones. We didn't want to sound like, some modern band. We thought that sounded terrible, the way they have drums sound, whereas, Satisfaction was masterpiece, So we'd go in the studio and argue with like the studio engineers. They go, you can't do that. Well, what do you mean you can't? Can we try? We're paying you. It was always an argument and a fight. And it became this thing where, we knew just from looking at pictures and seeing like, footage of the Stones or the Beatles, like the kind of guitars they played, and see the kind, Vox amps, and we'd go out, try to find the shit and use it. I remember when we started the Chesterfield Kings, we didn't have a bass player. I showed up with a guitar because I'm a guitar player, and we didn't have a bass player. And, oh man, who's going to play bass? I go, I'll play bass, because I had just bought a Hofner Beatle bass like for $70 from some place. They were trying to give it away because it wasn't fashionable. So like in 1977, 78, the 60s had just ended, like, just a few years prior to that. And like a Beatle bass was so not cool. But I was like, fuck, man, a Beatle, I'd love to have that. And I just happened to have it. So I became the bass player just because I happened to have a bass. And it was a Beatle bass, Hofner. So that's what I played in the Chesterfield Kings. So we were very in tune to getting the same kind of instruments that bands in the 60s had. But what we found is we still weren't getting the right sound on the recordings. And it became a bit of an obsession with me. I worked in a guitar store, and like, I'd see all kinds of equipment, modern stuff, but I'd really hone in on this stuff. And, people come in and they talk about, hey, I want to get a Vox amp like the Beatles had it. And I understood that the Beatles didn't use the American made solid state stuff in the studio. They used the British tube stuff, because I had already been researching it. And these guys would come in and they'd be totally wrong, and they'd have arguments. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. I was there. I saw what the Beatles use at Shea Stadium. They use this solid state Super Beatle. I go, well, no, that's not what they used in the studio, though. And it was just like this thing. And it was a passion with me, because I wanted to get our Chesterfield Kings records to sound cool. And then I just was super interested in it too, being a big fan of the Beatles. And it was on one of those kind of days, I think in the mid 90s or something like that I was, there was this like back office at this guitar store that I worked at, and guys that I worked with, we were in there drinking beer and shit. And then somebody came in there going, I want to get a Rickenbacker like the Beatles played, in a Vox amp like the, oh, you're going to want to talk to Andy. So I'd go, I'll wait on the guy. Then I'd come back all frustrated. The guy didn't buy the shit, for one. And then for two, the guy was being an asshole, trying to tell me everything he knew about Rickenbackers, and it was all totally wrong. And John Lennon only had this, and he didn't use those pickups, and what kind of amps they use. And I go, no, that's not how it was. It literally like getting into sparring matches with guys over it. And the guys were all laughing and cracking up. And I remember this friend of mine who I'm still friends with now, Steve White. He goes, you should just probably get a case of beer and lock yourself in the house for like the weekend and just write down everything you know about the Beatles equipment. I bet you that would be a book. And I thought about it, and I look, that sounds actually like a cool idea. And then I thought about it, and I just decided I'm going to do it. 6 years later, I owe that guy a punch and arm, because it took 6 years. It didn't take a weekend. It took a long time. But I'm glad I did it, and it was a lot of fun, and it put a lot of myths about Beatles equipment at rest, and a lot of misinformation. And I was able to uncover a lot of stuff, like Ringo's drums, for instance. He had no clue what he had or what it was. He thought he had just parts, and I put it all together for him, and it's just. I've
heard the same thing from Gary Astridge, his drum curator.
Yeah, Gary basically took what I did and then just took it to another level. At that point, I became disinterested in it. I was like, I did it already. I don't want to beat a dead horse and be the guy. At that point, I was working on the Stones book, so I moved on. But Gary kind of picked up where I left off. But yeah, it was. This was in the 90s. I did that. I did. I was in London, and I wrote to Ringo, and this is before internet, so it's fax machines and shit. Mm-hmm. FedEx. And I flew over to London, and he was in Monaco, and his guy Bill Harris says, Richie, this guy's figured out that you actually have 3 kids here and half of one. Oh my God. And then Ringo wanted to talk to me, and he wanted me to explain to him exactly how it all happened. You guys got a place up there called Casino Rama?
Yeah. It's I think it's Barry or like Aurelia somewhere.
Yeah, it's north of Toronto. So before the book came out, he had asked me to come up and bring all these pictures and kind of explain to him what the hell it was, the whole story. This is before the book was actually out. And I showed it to him, hung out with them for a couple of days. They were rehearsing up there before the tour. That version of the, I think it was 1999 or something, or maybe it was 2000. I think it was 1999. Anyhow, the book wasn't out yet. I showed him a galley of it. He was looking at it, I remember like one time after lunch, we sat down at a table and can you show me everything? And showing him. I said, well, this is your first drum head. Oh. And here's the other kit, and this is a 20-inch, and then this is your second drum head. And then, and then I basically laid out like 7 drum heads and all the different kits. He's taking his glasses off, squinting, putting them back on and looking. And he goes, Andy, all these drum heads look the same to me. I go, Ringo, they're all different, man. They were all hand done. They're all different. And he kind of looked at me and he grabbed my arm and he goes, Andy, you're crazy. And I go, thanks, man. It was really funny because he really appreciated what I did, but yet he found it so astonishing that he didn't actually understand what the hell that all happened while, he was, in the Beatles, so to speak. He was just in the Beatles and the shit was just happening for him. Mel would do it. There's my kid. Okay, great. Let's play it,
It's like, how the fuck did I end up with 6 kits?
Yeah, well, it was the 4, and then the 5th one was the maple one, and so the book came out, and soon on I was getting called by like some museums and different colleges and stuff. Jesus Christ, with this thing. Sorry, somebody keeps on sending me messages.
You're a very popular man.
I don't want to be. Anyhow, one of these things that I was doing was in Buffalo. It was at a museum, I believe. I forget. It was some function, a lecture I had to give. And the book had just come out, and I had gotten a phone call from this guy that collected Beatle basses in Buffalo. Tony Capizzi, I believe his name is. Yes. And
Beatle basses in Buffalo. Try to say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, right. And he goes, I got this friend Gary. He's got a drum set that looks just like Ringo's, and can we bring it to the museum where you're going to be doing? We want to set it up and have the bass, one of the basses there, and the drum set, so you could while you're giving a lecture. I go, by all means, man, it'd be cool. And we went out to dinner, and my book had just come out, and Gary got it. And he goes, man, this gives me all this information. I didn't know. I go, yeah, man, I actually played Ticket to Ride on that drum set. I got a video of myself playing it, like, from 2 years prior to the book coming out. It's private, and I never showed. Oh, my
God.
But, like, it was just fun geeking out over dinner and a couple beers before I had to do this thing. And then spin the clock forward, I don't know, 10 years or something. And next thing you know, Gary's like this drum aficionado of Ringo's drums. He started doing this website. And when Ringo wanted to actually figure out some stuff with his drums, they literally just looked it up on the internet and saw this guy had all this info. So they just reached out to him, and next thing you know, he's like Ringo's drum guy. But at that point, like I said, I was disinterested. The Beatle thing was getting a little overwhelming. I had done a couple Beatle fests, and I love the Beatles, but I was starting not to like the Beatles because it was a little Beatled out. And I had been working with the Stones and stuff, so I was just too busy and doing a million other things. And so, yeah, so Gary kind of picked up the ball where I left off with that and just, kept on running with it, which is great. Gary's a good friend of mine, but this was like well before that. It was a long time. And again, it was my passion of just trying to figure it out for the Chesterfield Kings. We're trying to figure out how these records were made. And then it just evolved and snowballed into this project that kind of grew and grew and grew. And then once it came out, people were like, oh my God, this has never been done before. And I go, I guess not. So there you go. That was the story of Beatles Gear in short form.
I want to ask, how'd you get the other ones involved? Because I know Paul was, or you talked to him at least a little.
Listen, the sad thing is I was actually in contact with George.
Really?
Yes. And you got to remember, there was no internet at the time. Had there been internet, it would have been way easier. There wasn't. Okay. Like I was making phone calls, and this is like not like phone calls you do now, like it's just free. If I'd been talking to you in Canada right now for this long, you know what the bill would look like? Crazy, But I used to get these bills, and I get these phone bills every month that were like $300-400. It's crazy. But that's the only way you could do it. Do the research. You'd get on the phone and call people until you find the right people, and then you'd have to tape the interviews and whatnot. And you send stuff in the mail, just regular slow mail. And if you needed to get there faster, you FedEx it. The breakthrough technology was a fax machine. So I remember getting in touch with George's assistant, who's actually Olivia Harrison's sister.
Okay.
She lives in Los Angeles because Olivia's originally from Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, and it was right. Anthology had just come out or was coming out. And I said, listen, I'm doing this book, and it's about the Beatles equipment, Beatles. And the book was supposed to be called Beatles Gear, all the Fab Gear's equipment from Snow. It was supposed to be called. It wasn't Beatles Gear initially. It was called something else. I got to remember. Man, I don't even remember what the hell it was called. I had a different working title anyway.
Oh, it was like almost 25 years ago.
Yeah, I don't remember. Beatle guitars. I don't know. It was something else. Anyhow, so I reached out to them, and they said, okay, he'll do an interview, but he doesn't want to talk necessarily about the Beatles. He's a little Beatled out from doing the anthology, which I could understand now. But at the time I was like, well, how can you be Beatled out? You're a Beatle. But they said, well, look, I just want to talk to him about equipment. It's a geek guitar equipment, amps. That's all I want to talk to him about. Okay, well, George wants to see all the questions first. Sure. And I kept it really short and sweet. I figured give him 15 questions and just keep it to the point, not so much that it's Beatle related. And I figured if he saw that I was just being a guitar geek, it would open him up, and that's how interviews usually go, because then they'll get chatty once they see you're not a nutcase.
Yeah.
And so I remember typing it all up and faxing it over, and then she faxed it over to England. And the response would never be instantaneous. It'd always take couple weeks, right? And it was right around the time that he got stabbed, because I sent it off. And it was a couple weeks went by, and I was going to reach out, and then I read in the news that he got stabbed. The story when the nutcase broke in the house and stuff. And
so this would have been 99?
Yeah. And I was just buttoning up the Beatles Gear book, as far as the final stuff, and I really wanted to interview him, and he was tough. He was tough to get a hold of. And then when I saw that, I was like, oh shit, man, I'll never interview him. And I never tried. I never pursued it because I thought, I soon did find out after, because I was talking to people at Apple at the time also. And I forgot who it was that told me, but they said, look, they found cancer. So, they're really hush hush, and nobody knew about it. And I thought, oh, poor guy, man. I don't even know what to say. I felt terrible. And it was really sad because after the book came out, people said, well, why didn't you interview George? I go, well, I tried to, but then somebody found out, he found out he had cancer, and I never pursued it. And they were like, people were getting mad at me. Oh, you should have pursued it, man. We'll never know about this. And then I go, well, what the fuck's the matter with you, man? If poor guy's gonna die, I'm gonna ask him about some stupid guitar. Like, that really fucking matters when, the poor guy's gonna pass away. He's got cancer. What the hell's the matter with you? But I didn't get that once or twice. I get that a lot, like from rabid Beatle fans. And I was like, man, it doesn't really matter that much, man. It really doesn't. It does, but it doesn't matter to be disrespectful to a guy.
They seriously give you a hard time about that?
Oh yeah, it was at a couple of those Beatle fests that I did. Like you do those Beatle fests, and they a lot of wonderful people, and I really enjoyed a lot of it. But they're the whack jobs that go to those things too, that are like, oh my God. And I had to literally stop doing them because, as I said, I was stopping. I was disliking the Beatles, which I don't want to not like the Beatles. I love the Beatles, but this is making me really not enjoy it, and it's not fun. It became kind of like a weird Star Trek convention.
Yeah. Oh, Beatle fests. I love the Beatle fest, but it isn't for the faint of heart.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to say 80% of the people there are ultra cool, very hip, and it's just fun. And then you got 20% that are like, oh my God, are you from Mars, or are you insane? And those are the people that would latch on to you. And like, you're trying to be nice, but oh my God, and they would be the people that would ask me bizarre questions like, man, you should have asked George, man. Now he's dead and you don't know, and you could have had it in your book. I'm going, I can't believe, you want to tell him, man, I can't believe you're asking me such a bizarre question. I mean, don't you have any common respect for another human? I mean, the guy's a Beatle, that's great, but he's also just a dude that, he's gonna die from cancer. I'd be like a total asshole. I mean, it's as bad as that doctor that asked him for an autograph while he was on his deathbed. I mean, it's fucking crazy. What are you, nuts?
Well, so, I don't blame any of the Beatles for being wary of fucking crazy fans.
Yeah, you see that, and you experience that at different levels and stuff, and you understand it, and so
especially since John was murdered by one.
Yeah. I mean, when you hang with people like that and you see how they're protected, there's a reason for it, and it's not even worth getting into. It's kind of sad in a way, and you have to respect people's privacy, and the people who don't, they don't understand, and sometimes they get mad about it, like, well, how come you didn't do this? It's like, you don't get it, man. It's like, you either get it or you don't get it. If you don't get it, I don't want to explain it.
You're not obligated to fucking answer to anybody.
So anyhow, I mean, doing the book was a lot of fun. It led into a lot of other great projects that I did. Like I said, I worked with the Stones. I worked directly with them, and they were really cool. They let me go through all their stuff, and we photographed everything. And that subsequently led to doing the new edition of Beatles Gear, which the publisher finally let me do what I wanted to do in the original one. Because the original book was only half the manuscript. They edited out half of it. So when they saw that it actually sold great, and they saw, once they let me do what I wanted to do with the Stones book, then they said, okay, yeah, we'll let you do whatever you want on the Beatles one. And then that's why the new version, the Ultimate Edition, is pretty much how I wanted the original book to be.
Well, I want to ask you now some quick fire opinion questions.
Sure.
What is your favorite Beatles song?
Oh gosh, it's hard. You know, I there's a side of me that I still love Help.
Help.
Just the song Help. And it may be rooted a lot in the fact of when I was a kid seeing the film. But I think in analysis of it, why I like it, if you think about the Beatles as a band, prior to, they were still evolving as a band songwriting-wise. You know, I Want to Hold Your Hand. They're still like, okay, holy shit, we're writing songs. Let's, you know, what do we write about? You know, and it was evolving musically as well. And then later Beatles, it was very much John Lennon songs and Paul McCartney songs, specifically, you know, Sgt. Pepper, White Album moving forward. But at that point, I think the trilogy of albums, I'd say Hard Day's Night, Help, Rubber Soul kind of period, you know, Beatles for Sale, that time period, it was very much a band. You know, it was two guys writing songs. The other guys added instrumentation. They worked as a unit, and it wasn't like, well, this is my song, that's your song. You know, that kind of a thing. And I think Help is a very good example of, I think if George didn't play the stuff he played on it and Paul didn't sing what he sang, and, you know, it wouldn't be the same song, you know. If John just did it as like a demo and just sang it and an acoustic guitar, it'd be a much different song. So I don't know. To me, that's the Beatlemania and Beatles, like that innocent Beatle thing. That I think I really like that. You know. So to me, that's one of my favorites.
Fuck, when you mentioned Help, you just unlocked a memory that I forgot I had from, you know, early on when I was listening, just being on the playground with my friend trying to do the harmonies in Help. And oh man, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, and again, I mean, the vocals are just, it wasn't like one guy singing the song and the other guys just adding a little bit on the tail on the chorus or something, you know, like you would hear a lot later. This was like, you know, three guys singing a lot of the song. You know what I mean?
And there's like two overlapping vocal parts that don't match up with each other. It was very much
a band effort, you know. So in the spirit of, you know, loving the idea that they were this unit, like I said before, a four-headed monster, it became something different later. Not that that was bad. It's just the band evolved. But, it, you know, when you study it, and, you know, obviously I studied it quite a bit.
Yeah.
You know, as it moves on, and by the time you get into, you know, Abbey Road and stuff, it's very much, okay, that's his song, and this is his song, and, you know, they played on it because they needed somebody to play the parts, but it wasn't like a combined effort to make the song great. And in a weird way, I bring that concept, that thing, what I said earlier. If you listen to the four, you know, you asked me like who's my favorite Beatle, you listen to their four material, you know, the material they did separately after the Beatles, all good, but it wasn't the Beatles. When you put them together, it's the yin and the yang and the four-headed monster, as I said, that, you know, they would call themselves. That's what makes it, and just using that concept for myself personally, and in the band that I'm in now, the Empty Hearts, it's very much the same thing. You know, I can have an idea for a song, and those guys would be more than happy to just do exactly what I say and play it how I want. Or if Wally had a song, or Elliot, or Clem had an idea, you know, we'd be all very respectful and do whatever the guy said. But we set out the band to be a band, so each guy throws their thing in. Like, you throw Elliot Easton in on a band, let him do whatever he wants. He'll play whatever you want him to play. But if you just say, Elliot, be do your magic, do your Elliot Easton stuff. He does his thing, which then makes the Empty Hearts sound like the Empty Hearts and not like Andy Babiuk wrote a song and got some guys to play to his liking. I want Elliot to do what he does to an idea I got, and then it mutates into a whole different thing. And I think that was the magic of the Beatles. Lennon would come up with a part, Paul would come up with a middle section. They'd both sing something together, and then George would add something on top of that. And then you got Ringo playing, it's like the drums and Ticket to Ride. I mean, you change that drum part, and it's a totally different song.
Yeah.
So I think it's that work of a band, I think, creates magic. And I think that's really the magical point of the Beatles. I think 65, early 66, late 64, 65, 66, that time period, I think they were unstoppable. I would have loved to hear like 2 more albums in between, like Help and
Rubber Soul.
Yeah, it would be just, what would those records sound like?
We can only fucking dream.
Yeah. I've actually challenged some bands that are like Beatle, cover bands, good ones, like 1964, yeah. Mark Benson, very good friend of mine.
Mark Benson has appeared on the show.
Yeah, no, he's a great guy. And I always bust his balls. We've done a lot of events together where I'll do, lecture and then they'll play and whatnot. Did a very memorable one down at the Duval Hotel for the 50th anniversary of the Beatles playing there. 1964, played the set that they played there on the same, in the same ballroom that they filmed the, TV show. It was great. It was wonderful. No, I actually told that to Mark Benson quite a few times because they do records as, 1964. They do Beatle covers and sometimes they do obscure stuff. But I said, Mark, imagine if you guys sound so good, so much like the Beatles. Imagine if you wrote songs in the vein of like the Beatles finished Help and they didn't do Rubber Soul yet, but they cut another album in between. What would it sound like? Write songs like that and do it. People would love to hear that. And, I've told it to a couple different bands. I think the Fab Four also. Yeah.
I've had a couple of the guys from the Fab Four on the show.
Yeah. I'm talking about the California band.
Yeah.
Yeah. Arnie's band.
Artie and Ron and those guys.
Yeah. And, I guess it's a challenging thing to do.
Yeah. Well, it's not an easy task. Like, hey, write some Beatles songs.
Well, I mean, that's what they do for a living. I always laugh at Mark. I go, so, Mark, how does it feel like when you tell somebody what your job is? Yeah, I'm John Lennon for a living. Oh, okay. Can you tell me what your real job is? Yeah, no, I'm a musician. I play John Lennon for a living. We always have a laugh at that, Mark's a great guy.
Well, he kind of fucking got to be a Beatle when he grew up.
Yes, that's what he does for a living. But no, I mean I think that was a magical time for just the Beatles as a band, And then it quickly evolved, man. They went from that to something totally different, Sgt. Pepper. Holy shit, what? This is, and thank God they did. That was another thing that a lot of people always ask me is, why do you think the Beatles got so big and did so much more than a lot of the other bands? And musically, if you study some of the other bands, like, for instance, if you take a look at the chart hits that the Beatles had at the same time when they first started, is, say, Jerry and the Pacemakers. Well, Jerry and the Pacemakers, I know Jerry. They never changed. They were that band that they started to be, and they never did anything different. They never even evolved to, Help status.
Yeah.
They always stayed ferry across the Mersey, which is not bad. But because they never evolved, they never went anywhere. Like Dave Clark 5 had huge hits, tons of them.
Mm-hmm.
Tons. And they're a great band. Don't get me wrong.
Dave Clark 5 were fucking awesome.
Yes. But they never turned into what the Beatles did. They ended up just breaking up. They tried towards the end to try to do it, but they were still hanging on to the pop.
Yeah. They never had their Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah. like on the contrast to that, a band like the Pretty Things, SF Sorrow.
Oh,
yeah, they went for it, man. They went for it, which is wow. I'm glad they did, but in the end, then they evolved into a lot of other stuff too. But they did it. The Stones, of course, did it, and they kept on doing it, and they continue to do it.
There's a reason why I've never mentioned SF Sorrow on the show, is because once you get me started on it, I'll never fucking shut up.
Yeah, well, it's one of my favorite records.
I fell asleep listening to SF Sorrow last night. I shit you not.
Yeah, it's great. It's one of my favorites. But, even like with the Zombies, they had their hits and they were very great, their early stuff. And then, then they did that last album, which is considered to be a masterpiece.
Odyssey and Oracle.
Yeah, I love that record. But they broke up before it even came out.
Yeah.
Because of the way the music business was, And if the Beatles, I think, had to depend on cash from live shows and, they weren't as wealthy as they were as a band bringing in income because of their record sales worldwide. Who knows what would have happened to them? Maybe they would have had to stay together to play to make money like the Stones did. They were broke, man. They had to move out of England because they couldn't pay the tax.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So, who knows what they would have evolved into? I don't know. I really don't know. Sometimes money does that to you. They had the luxury of each having, by the time they broke up, they had enough money where we don't have to do this anymore. We have plenty of cash.
I want to ask you one last question.
Yes.
What is your least favorite Beatles song? This is always the hard one.
I would.
Well, it's hard depending on who you talk to.
Well, it depends on my mood. But let's just put it this way: if there's a song that I skip over, that I don't like, if I'm listening to an album, and then I actually just okay. Now it's easy because you just press a button and it just skips. But I'd actually walk over the turntable and skip the record, skip the song. And I think a lot of people will say this: Revolution Number 9.
Yeah.
I like it better now, and listening to it for all the weird textures than I did when I was younger. When I was younger, I'm going, what the fuck were they thinking?
The real loser there is the song Good Night, because I'm sure so many people never listened to that song, because just as soon as Revolution 9 came on, they're like, okay, we can put the record away now.
Well, there was a version of it where there's no orchestra. It's more of just the band playing it, which was interesting.
Yeah.
It was almost a throwaway song. It's funny because you must have listened and seen the interviews that George Martin had done while he was alive about the White Album.
Of course.
Saying that, he thought it would have been a better single album, a stronger single album than a double album. Then you see McCartney in the same time going, what people say, about, is this song, it's a fucking Beatles White Album. What the fuck, Yeah. And then he makes a joke, fuck you. It's a Beatles White Album. Fuck you. Which he has all the right to say because it's it is what it is. It's classic. But, from a production standpoint, pare it down to what they were doing on earlier records. They didn't put every song on every album they did. They cut other songs when they cut those earlier records. They didn't put every song out.
Well, that's how you're able to end up with the anthology. Yes.
So yeah, the White Album, that would be probably the one song that I would like. I like, even the quirky stuff my name, look, my number, I like the extended version of that,
that 7-minute version.
Yeah, it's comical.
Yeah,
and it's kind of interesting their mentality at that point. And again, I think that was driven by they didn't have to worry about cash. It gave them the artistic freedom to kind of really explore shit and fuck around. Because other bands, if they were on a schedule because the cash was short, they wouldn't have an unlimited budget to record whatever the fuck they wanted.
Yeah. God. Well, I want to ask you now, if we haven't mentioned it already, what would you like to plug?
I don't know. Plug my guitar into my amp. I don't know. Obviously, we talked about my Beatles Gear book and my Stones Gear book. I did write another book called The Story of Paul Bigsby, which is the history of the first electric guitar prior to Fender. It shows how Leo Fender ripped them off, which I got a lot of shit for.
Yeah.
Les Paul didn't invent the electric guitar. Paul Bigsby did. The modern solid body electric, that's Paul Bigsby. So it's an interesting study. Everybody thinks Paul Bigsby invented just, the Bigsby vibrato. That's what he's famous for, but he should actually be famous for something else. So people that are real guitar nerds understand it. And then, of course, that leads into Beatles Gear, Rolling Stones Gear, Fab Gear, my shop. If you ever need any groovy equipment, go to our website, AndyBabiuksFabGear.com, or give us a call, or come to Rochester when this pandemic is over and come and visit us. And then, of course, the Empty Hearts new album, which just came out a few weeks ago, actually. It's called The Second Album because it is our second album. And we have a special guest on it, Ringo Starr. For all the Beatle fans out there, the song is called Remember Days Like These. So either buy it or stream it on your favorite streaming service, but check it out. Ringo plays killer stuff on there. It's wonderful.
Well,
and we thank him so much for doing it.
I just want to say I've had a fucking blast talking to you today. This has been awesome.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. So I appreciate you taking the time, and thanks for doing it.
Likewise, to everyone else out there, thank you for listening. You can go home now.
Fans on the Run is produced by Ethan Alexanian. Additional voiceovers by Richard Phillip. This has been a Showtown production.